All right. Yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rock. Yeah. Welcome and happy Friday to all my people out there. Yeah, we're gonna have, as the title suggests, in today's live stream, we're gonna be looking at, I guess, what you would say is some anti-communist propaganda. Um, it's kind of like very loosely described as anti-communist propaganda because I guess there's anti-communist propaganda which had some substance from I guess the Cold War era, and so like everything kind of not even the Cold War era. I guess could break it up into three components. You would have your anti-communist propaganda that like predates the world wars even, um, or like comes from at least that period. Then you have the anti-communist propaganda that would have come, I guess, as a result of the Cold War. So after World War II and the rise of the Soviet Union, and like I guess the realization of the West and free market societies that the Soviets and kind of this anti-capitalist movement was a force to be reckoned with. And then you have the anti kind of communism of like after the fall of the Soviet Union, which is kind of just like really lame theoretical anti communism because like communism has kind of been really devoid of all of its meaning, especially in the 21st century. Like you had like this really strange occurrence in Trump's, I guess, part of his campaign, I guess you would call it, leading up to his election, his electoral win last year, which was kind of anything that the Democrats were doing, or like just kind of calling Kamala Harris generally a communist, or like any of her policies or any of her decisions were like, communist Kamala and stuff like that. So like the word has completely lost all meaning. Like it used to mean something like in the Cold War era, like anti-communist propaganda was like showing how the free market was like this wonderful invention of humanity, and nothing was going to nothing was going to kind of take its away its predominance on the world stage, and then like by default showing that like you know anti-capitalist kind of planned economies were a bad idea. So there was some substance to that. And then like predating that, it was kind of more like, democracy and liberty versus like this evil specter of communism that's coming to lie to the working class and kind of capture them in this sentiment of utopianism, um and like just basically destroy their perception of reality. But like like I said, now like communism has absolutely no meaning. It's basically just anything that's antithetical um to America, I guess, and American values, it would seem. And so, like, because America kind of embodies, I guess, the free market ideology, and and a very distinct form of neoliberal ideology in the 21st century, then anything that's kind of outside of this orthodox free market style of living is communist. And so, like the type of propaganda we're going to look at today, which, like I said, is a very particular form of anti communist propaganda, which is, again, just anything that is non American, I guess, and non American free market is communism, is going to be bashed. I assume in this whole piece. I started watching some of it last night, to be honest, because it came up on my feed, and I might as well show you what it is, what it's called. It's this one here. This came up on my feed last night while I was, sitting down, just, having a break from reading The Grundrisse by Karl Marx. And the title is the thing that got me. It came up and it said the purpose of communism is not to govern, and I was like, "Fuck!" Someone finally gets it. I was actually really impressed with the title, and so I was like, "Oh, I better click on this because this is my jam." Communism has got nothing to do with government. Actually, it's got to do with the type of communistic style of living. It's like basically replicating primitive communism. So, like when you know humans used to live in basically hunter-gatherer societies where we basically had all of our basic needs met, and really we focused all of our attention on like kind of our social production, I guess you would say. So just like dealing with each other socially as other social creatures, and dealing with like kind of complex human issues, um, and like kind of yeah, going back to that, but with an industrial lens now, like an industrial focus on society. I just had a viewer in there, and it looks like I've lost viewers again. But like, if you are viewing this and you want to say hi, just name yourself in the chat or say hello in the chat, just so I know you're there. Um, so yeah, like I was really captured by the actual title, and the title was completely not what I was looking at. Like, I obviously have a very, very biased view when using the word communism. Like, I'm obviously looking at the word communism because I have a certain level of understanding of what it means to be communism. Whereas, like other people, when they use it, they're obviously using the pejorative and heavily propagandized application of communism, which I have said in the 21st century has just literally lost all meaning. Like, I really do think that communism, all that communism means now in the 21st century, especially from a Western sense, is just like basically anything that is not, that is un American and unfree market, um, and anything that is not conservative or right wing on the political spectrum. That's why, like I said before, you have Trump calling Kamala a communist, which like it just makes absolutely no sense. But like his supporters and like the general American population, because they have absolutely no understanding now of what the word communism means, it literally could just mean anything left wing of I'm stealing this from a meme. I didn't make this up myself, but it's hilarious. But like communism is anything left of um, hunting homeless people for sport. Um, so like actually it's less than that. It's left wing is anything sorry, communism is anything left of basically the center of the political spectrum, and like providing some type of understanding that you need to provide for one another in an economic system, as opposed to just providing for people's individual self-interest and allowing individuals the opportunity to run rampant with the economy. So yeah, any type of planning or understanding that you need to actually have some responsibility in economics to people outside of your own individual self, that is communism. Now, I guess that would be it. And so we're going to have a look at this incredible piece of anti-communist propaganda from the 21st century. And we're going to react to it. I'm going to react to it. And like, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about it as I go, because I will just not be able to help myself. Like I said, I tried to watch this last night when it was suggested to me, and I got tricked. I thought it really was about the purpose of communism is not to govern, as in it's got nothing to do with government as we know it. And I was really excited by that, but it just ended up being like a hook line for people that are anti-communist to understand about how communists historically have had very little regard for liberal democratic styles of governance, which is not surprising because historically communists have obviously wanted to break away from liberal democracies. So if you look at it through a historical lens and had any, I don't know, if you had two brain cells, you would probably know that. But like, you know, usually the types of people that we have on the screen here don't really have two brain cells. That's why they engage in trashy and very simplistic communistic propaganda. But let's have a look at what they say before I provide any more scathing critiques of what the hell's going on here. So let's have a look, shall we?
That the communist so the American experiment is open-ended. They're not, other than the Republican form of government, the intrinsic,
the sort of communist idea that if you crush the people that are causing the problems, then you will solve the problems.
That's the intrinsic communist idea. That's right.
That's the intrinsic communist idea. So can we just take a moment? Like, I know we're only literally 10 seconds into this, but they've already set the stage with incredible bias here. That, like, communism is a form of government that
crush the people that are causing the problems, then you will solve the problems.
That crushes people that cause problems in their societies, and that's how they I don't know, fix issues in their societies.
That's the intrinsic communist idea.
That's intrinsic to communism. So let's just check that me and him are using the same word as intrinsic, as in like it's like kind of a basic core concept, and like intrinsic meaning, like it's a fundamental motivating factor within an idea or a concept or a tangible item. In intrinsic, here we go. Let's just make sure. An essential nature of a thing. It's inherent within. It's situated or belonging solely. It's inward, internal. Yeah, we're using the same thing. So crushing people who give you problems within your society is intrinsic to communism. So like right from the get-go, we have got very, very vivid and great example or exemplification, really, of the idea of what communism is in the 21st century to people who have no idea what it is and are just themselves products of an enormous propaganda machine. Not only products, but look at these people, like they are actually contributing to the propaganda machine. But like the strength of the modern propaganda machine is so engrossing that like these people have no idea that they're just literally regurgitating an element of the propaganda machine itself. Like they wouldn't look at these three people on this panel here. Like they wouldn't have had an original idea between the three of them ever in their lives. Like look at old mate here on the left with the mustache. Like Caucasian people with mustaches like that, like, you know, not to stereotype, but like enough said. So I'm not looking for anything deep and theoretical from these people, but like if anything, when we're watching this, we should be using this as a way of understanding how deep the anti-communist sentiment is within the general zeitgeist of Western political discourse, so we can, I don't know, somehow combat that. Like that's an uphill battle, but at least if we understand like the massive assumptions that underlie this type of thinking, we might be able to combat it a little. And the massive assumption underlying this hit piece on communism is that one, that the way that communism works is, and this is what communism is, right? Okay, is crushing your own people. Okay, that's rule number one. And two, crushing your own people is intrinsic to communism. Okay, so let's just remember that, because by definition, if that's what communism is, then anything that does that crushes its own people, like when the Americans in the 60s crushed students that were, like, part of the civil rights movement, and opened fire against them, or like when in America again during the civil rights movement, they were crushing and suppressing their own people. Um, that type of crushing of dissent, that is communism. So by extension, the Americans themselves are communists when they deal with their own people. So like, I think it just shows you how stupid these people really are, because they don't take their own lessons and their own ideology, their own theoretical understanding of the world, and critically think about that. They don't think about, like, oh, well, if that's what I'm basing a definition of something on, could that be applied to the society that I come from? And like, what ramifications would that have? And like, if you think about it in that light, it would mean that by your own definition, you live in a communist society. But like, I guess that's a step way too far for people like this. It's just too complex, that way of thinking. But let's keep going, shall we?
Right. Is that the communist political, so the American experiment is open-ended. They're not other than the Republican form of government, they're not saying how we're going to end up with a more perfect union, but they do say, justice and so on are these tools. Um, the communists believe that communism is the correct.
So the free market ideology, the Republican ideology, liberal democratic ideology is that, oh, let's just have Republican forms of government, and like, the only way we will shape society is through the ideal of justice. So it's just complete democracy, and like, we just use our justice system to ensure the regulation of society, and that's it. That's all the American culture is about. It's about democracy to the utmost, and full competence, and faith in the justice system. So just remember that. What makes America great is it has real democracy, a real Republican style democracy, and a fully functional and faith backed justice system. I think I don't really need to go into the fact that, like, that is just complete and utter nonsense. Most people have no faith in the justice system in America. And it's not like some form of meritocracy, or any exemplifier of actual justice. It only exemplifies and mirrors the free market dynamic. So if you have the money to engage in the legal system and the justice system, then you will be able to play within that system and work it to your own needs. And then the political system is the exact same thing. Those with money are able to play within the system and game the system to their own advantage. So like, I don't know what this guy's talking about already, but like, he's going to tell us why communism is different to that.
Correct answer. Period. So communists believe that communism is the correct answer. Period. So it is not possible that the communism is wrong. It's only possible that the communism is being sabotaged by class enemies. It's by people who are, as you said, doing the wrong thing. And so when you read Lenin about the dictatorship of the proletariat, and he draws his view, which is not necessary. Marx and Engels weren't exactly consistent across all of their writings, but he draws his views directly from primarily Engels, but also partly Marx, on what he calls the dictatorship of the proletariat. Lenin is absolutely clear. You can read it for yourself. It's in State and Revolution. It's not that long. But the first chapter is really all you have to read here too. He's absolutely clear that the point of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to destroy the bourgeoisie. That's it. That's the whole point. The dictatorship of the proletariat, meaning his band of thugs, is going to represent the entire proletariat cause, and that it's entire.
Okay, so he is kind of conflating Bolshevism with the dictatorship of the proletariat, which was a revolutionary concept given to us by Marx and Engels, and discussed in the Communist Manifesto as a result of their understanding of the revolutions that they were involved in. Like they came and existed during the age of revolutions, when kind of, I guess you would say, that liberal societies were disposing of the monarchies of old and the kind of almost feudal structures of old. And people were entering into liberal societies where they were free individuals, free to kind of carve out their own existence within a free market system. And so they experienced actual revolutionary events, like bloody revolutions. And so, yes, they were more than aware of the revolutionary potential of working people and the masses. And so what he's talking about here is kind of that revolutionary lust and fever that like is transferred into their works. And like the dictatorship of the proletariat is a very distinct and crucial element within scientific socialist revolutionary theory, in the sense that all revolutionary events, when you look at the change of a mode of production from one to another, so whether that was from the ancient mode to the feudal mode, from the feudal mode to the capitalist mode, you had basically a change in the class of people that dominated society thanks to their relationship to the means of production. So the capitalists own the means of production in the end of the feudal era and brought about the capitalist era. And in order to bring about the capitalist era, they needed to depose the feudal arrangements, so the monarchy, I guess you would say. And they had to do that through bloody revolution. They did that through, intrigue, usurpation. Like they didn't just gently ask the kings of old, the landed gentry, the aristocracy of old, to step aside. In many cases, they rallied the poor masses and the working class and offered them freedom and individual liberty, and equality, like all of these notions of liberal society. They offered this to the masses, said, fight for us, dispose the societies of old, your current social systems, and you will have all the spoils of this new society. And so they convinced the masses to fight for them. And so this is a very similar concept. The dictatorship of the proletariat is it's twofold, in the sense that it understands or is cognizant of the fact that in order for there to be a revolutionary event where one class of people now becomes the predominant class in that society, they need to overthrow the existing class that's in power and suppress them, make sure that they don't come back. So the idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat is that the working class are supposed to take control of society and suppress the bourgeoisie. And so he's basically what he's saying, I think very rudimentarily, and in a very black and white fashion, is the only point of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to attack the bourgeoisie and to suppress the bourgeoisie. Well, he's right. because that is historically what has happened in the past. When you have a new, you have a rising group of people that seek to take power from and dispose another class within society, they do so by suppressing the group that was there before. In not all cases do they completely suppress them violently. Like in a lot of cases, like the transition from capitalism to from feudalism to capitalism, it wasn't done overnight, and there was a lot of actual intermarriage between capitalists, the bourgeois, and the old landed aristocracy, and they kind of, let's say, they mated with one another, and they became the new bourgeoisie, based on the old landed gentry being assumed into the bourgeois class. They were the people that had the wealth and the power now. But the landed gentry had the title, and they still had leftover power from the old system. And so there was a melding of those two classes. Now, the dictatorship of the proletariat is kind of this acknowledgement that, like, yes, you need to take over. You actually need to take over. It's not going to be done without struggle. And it's also an acknowledgement in that sense of not kind of letting go of any working class values and like kind of melding with the bourgeoisie, to try and create a new society and take over things, but like being distinctly opposed to it and standing above it. So like not kind of melding together like the bourgeois did with the old aristocracy in the past, and kind of tried to use their power to make their own power and set up their own society, but like completely separating yourself from the bourgeoisie altogether and bourgeois society altogether, and setting up a class that stands above it. And so this is an acknowledgement of the fact that, like, in revolutionary events, this type of stuff happens. It's got to be done, and like if you don't suppress this other class, this other previously dominant class, they will try to take power back. And like these are the lessons that they learned from witnessing revolutions firsthand. This wasn't just theoretical for these people, for Marx and Engels and stuff like that, or Lenin. Like Lenin maybe to a lesser degree, but like definitely Marx and Engels. Like they were witnessing this stuff for themselves. They had tasted revolutionary zeal. It wasn't, like I said, just a theoretical notion for them. And so that's why they have come up with these ideas that, in today's sense, like, especially for the last, 50 years in Western society anyway, we've had this very negative association with any type of violence and warfare, because we've lived in Western societies we've lived in a very general time of peace and prosperity. Like we haven't had full on and full scale war in the West for a very, very long time. We're starting to see that kind of now. Europe's starting to see that. But like, pre 2020, like that wasn't a daily occurrence for Westerners and people in advanced countries. So like, it's very easy for these people to sit in their little studio with their mugs, and their fancy microphones, and just be like, oh, they just want to suppress the bourgeoisie and like hold them accountable. It's disgusting. And it's just like, well, like, okay, by today's standards, it might seem a bit much to want to suppress an entire class of individuals, to ensure your own needs and desires are satisfied. But like historically, that's definitely what has happened. So it's not unusual or barbaric if you think about it in its
Higher
context.
purpose isn't. It's a dictatorship. It's not even to govern. Its purpose is to smash the enemies of the state, and governing and everything else comes second. And because the belief is that if everybody else transforms into a communist, we won't have to govern you. That's where they say, or again, that was Marx in the gosh, where did he write that one?
Gosh, where did he write that one? I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm just saying it.
Was that in the Critique of the Gotha Program? So he writes that,
He talks about it in the Communist Manifesto, you fucking idiot.
the
Look,
state will wither away of its own accord. Well,
so, like, what he's really overarchingly far out, this is going to take a long time to analyze this because there's more wrong than you can poke a stick at, unfortunately. I do have one viewer watching, it would look like, in my stats. If you'd like to say hello, don't be shy. But, like, basically what this guy has really, really washed over here without talking about it, like, properly is that, yes, the dictatorship of the proletariat is its idea and its function is about suppressing the bourgeoisie and stopping the counter-revolution. No, it doesn't have anything to do with governance because governance is a separate matter. First of all, if you want to revolutionize your society and like do it through a revolutionary party, spoke too soon, that person is gone. If you want to do it through a party and some type of revolutionary struggle event, what you need to do is you need to basically take control of a political system and make sure the existing force, the existing dominant class doesn't have access to the political structure anymore. So no, it's got nothing to do, and I have explained that, but no, it's got nothing to do with governing. Governing is something that the working class will do once they have come together and they have overthrown the system. That's what they do the next day, and forevermore after that they will actually sit down and govern. But like the point of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to be a dictatorship, is to be a class that sits above all others in order to run a society in their own image, just like the bourgeois have done, just like the feudal aristocracy before that, and your ancient societies that base themselves on slavery did before that. So yeah, he's kind of right that like it's got nothing to do with governance, but like for the wrong reasons. He's making it out like they don't give a shit about governing societies at all, and it would just be some type of chaos where governance would be an afterthought. I don't think it's got anything to do with that. It's really just about establishing the idea that in order to have a workers' society, a potentially socialist form of society, you need to have a class that's ready to suppress all others, so any counter-revolutionary forces. This comes again from a deep history and understanding of revolution, as opposed to like deciding what's the best form of governance or something like that, which is very misleading how he's put it. That's all.
Lenin gives an entire chapter in State and Revolution to that. What does it mean that the state will wither away of its own accord? And what it means is that when everybody's actually fully communist, we won't need to govern you. There's no need to govern.
That's, again, a really misleading way of saying it. It's got nothing to do with everyone saying they're communist, okay? So let's just say everybody in the room right now said, I'm a communist, so we've achieved communism. No, that's just fucking stupid. Like, honestly, this guy is just deliberately being ignorant. I'm sure he knows better than this, but what they're talking about is the idea that the state will wither away. Okay, so the state is a necessary evil to a lot of communists, let's say, and especially, Marxist, Leninists and stuff like that. Well, I would hope it's a necessary evil to these types of people. Anyway, the state is a means to an end. Okay, so the state exists as an apparatus in society to help regulate the social relations that kind of make up that society and help distribute the products of the mode of production evenly, or not evenly at all actually, across the many classes, and helps kind of administer society for the, let's say, the ruling class, the ruling elite, whoever that may be. Damn, really? I'm just getting a notification. Hello, comrades. Nice to see you all. Hello, beasts and gods. Mary Ellen. Hello. I am a communist. Yeah. And so, like, yeah, it's just this idea. It is just an idea that, like, if you had a system where you no longer had classes, where you had to administer your society in a certain way. So like one class kind of rules over the means of producing value, so the means of production, and other sections in society have to kind of relate to the means of production, but like they have to work it, or they have to regulate it somehow, or they have to watch over other people who kind of are operating the means of production. If you no longer had a society that's built into classes where some people benefit more from the value produced by the means of production, and others don't, if you had just a society where there was a general use of the means of production for everyone, and like so you didn't really have society broken up into classes anymore, the idea of the state would wither away. It would kind of like disappear or something like that. That's the idea of the withering away of the state, not the misleading way that this guy is presenting it. Like this guy is being very, very deceitful and misleading in the way that he's talking about these concepts.
That what does it mean that the state will wither away of its own accord? And what it means is that when everybody's actually fully communist, we won't need to govern you. There's no need to govern people who have already got it figured out, who are already governing themselves, but they're all going to have to be communists. They don't get to choose what they're going to be. They're all going to be communists.
Yeah, again, this is very misleading. He's making it sound like it's a choice. Like I said before, like if everyone in the room right now just said, hey, we're communists, like kind of thing, then like we would achieve communism. That's got nothing to do with it. Like communism, like I said, is like kind of this society that is stateless, moneyless, it's classless. There is no divisions between people based on kind of their structure in a hierarchy or something like that. And like there would be a general level of abundance and all that sort of stuff. So people have basically what they need. So, like I said, that's why the state would wither away, not because people are self-governing and like they live in this little utopia where everybody just looks after their own interests, or like they figured out a way of governance that is so efficient and so perfect. As long as you utter the words in the mirror 3 times, I'm a communist, I'm a communist, I'm a communist, like kind of thing, you'll just like enter into this wonderful relation with everybody else, like this wonderful utopia as I described. Like it's got nothing to do with like, you know, just sitting there and wishing and if I just believe hard enough, this is going to happen. And like that's how he's making it sound. He's making it sound like, you know, just say the words 3 times, I'm a communist, and you will become one and you'll live in that type of society. It's got nothing to do with that. Like he's really making it very, very trivial, unfortunately, this gentleman here.
But when they all have to be, need to govern people who have already got it figured out, who are already governing themselves, but they're all going to have to be communists. They don't get to choose what they're going to be. They're all going to be communists. But when they all are, we won't have to govern you, which P.S., not to open a can of worms, but that's the same model as Islam. When everybody believes the exact same version of Islam, then and they have the perfect Islam means submission to Allah, then they won't really need to be governed anymore because you know, everybody's doing it perfectly as already. Well, the idea here is that
like, could you throw any more keywords in there to like trigger people? It's just like, oh my god, communism, and he's used it in relation to Islam. Oh no, but we're scared of Muslims too. Oh, and we're scared of communists. Oh my god, how scared must we be of these two concepts, because they're fundamentally the same thing. And it's like, this is just like, this is why I've said in the title that it's just like, this is anti-communist propaganda. Like this is actual propaganda. Like this guy and like this panel of people are trying to spread a particular opinion of communism here. They're not trying to objectively look at it and get some varied opinions going on. This guy is basically saying, I know that people are scared of Islam, so like why don't I just show how these two things are similar, in that like they give people this idealistic view that if they just follow this particular doctrine, then like they will all be the same and homogenous and will be able to govern themselves, which for a free market person like this is just like, huh, that's ridiculous. Like, you know, people can't govern themselves. They need to be existing in some type of hierarchy or system like that that tells them what to do. And so like everything is just utopianism and idealism for this guy, and it's scary because, you know, Islam's scary, communist scary, and like you can compare the two of them. Oh my god, what are we gonna do?
It'll wither away because everybody's communist. So if there's still the need for governance. And
again, just to clarify, it's not going to wither away just because everybody calls themselves a communist. It's because they have achieved a communistic style of living. This guy is just a knob.
Entire chapter in State and Revolution talks about what the state actually is and what it's for. The state exists to maintain or to destroy class society. That's what Lenin says about the state. So the socialist state exists to destroy class society, and the bourgeois state exists to maintain class society. So if you are not obtaining the communist utopia where everybody fully believes it, that means you've got to find the people who don't fully believe it and destroy them. Whereas the American, again,
it's look. I'm not sure if they're advocating for you to destroy people who don't call themselves communists and are ruining the fantasy that if everybody just stood around and say, we are communists, we'd achieve communism or something like that. Like, no. But like what he is talking about, yes, okay, or what they are talking about is the dictatorship of the proletariat. So you must have a class, which is the working class, that establishes them at the top of the social hierarchy in order to ensure that a proletarian society, a working class society, is the next type of society that dominates humanity moving forward. So it's not about like literally eliminating everyone who doesn't call themselves or isn't part of the working class or isn't proletarian or something like that. It's not about eliminating those people. It's about ensuring that society moves in a direction that is within the interests of the working class only. And so like, fine, that might be problematic to some people. Like there's a lot of people out there that like do believe holistically in pluralistic democracy, and they believe that like everyone can have a voice properly in a pluralistic society, in a free society. You don't have to go down this road of having a dictatorship of one class to kind of control things to get things moving in the right direction. They do believe in the ideals of a liberal democratic society. And so like this type of thing, having the working class rule as a dictatorship would be scary. But like, yes, because it would kind of, it would get rid of actually liberal style democracy and the illusion that everybody has a say in the piece. It would just scrap that. It would just be like, no, let's not live in this fantasy world where we think that like just because we're pluralistic and everybody like on paper can have themselves represented in the political process. Let's get rid of that idea. But it's not about hunting down people that don't call themselves communist or hunting down people that are not part of the working class or something like that and destroying them, as this guy has said. Like I'm still not sure if he is actually ignorant or deliberately ignorant. If he was actually ignorant, that would be excusable. Okay, that's fine because like at least you can educate yourself. But if you're being deliberately ignorant, then you are just an asshole because like that what you're saying is wrong, but you're just trying to convince people for whatever your agenda is.
Again, totally different experiment. The American view was, well, we're going to let you believe what you want. We're going to let you own what you have and what you can get. We're going to let you trade according to your own views, your own desires. If you want to grow an apple tree and keep all your apples, that's your business. And if you want to let them rot, that's your business. And if you want to sell them to your neighbor, that's your business. If you want to give them to your neighbor, that's your business. We're going to stay out of it. A complete opposite. And the idea was, we're not going to tell you what you have to believe. We're not going to tell you what you have to say. If you don't like what we're doing in the government, you have the right to petition for redress of your grievances. Try that in a communist country. Try that in a fascist country. Go tell the fascist government you don't like what they're doing. See what happens to you. We know what happens in the fascist communist China, where Jack Ma said some things he didn't like about the CCP, and he disappeared. He didn't just get shut up. He disappeared. He came back later, very changed, but he disappeared. He's a billionaire. He was about to launch the largest, most valuable IPO in the world, and they just disappeared him because he thought it would be a good idea to be slightly critical of the CCP at that moment.
Like I am not on the same page of him with him on this issue. And like maybe you can tell me your opinion like in the chat with this one. So I was just saying that I'm having some bad connection issues. I don't know if that's true or not. But like maybe you can tell me if you can't hear me properly or can't see me properly. Smuggle out billions in jewels and golds and other portable assets. All right, like give me your opinion on this one, because like I haven't fully developed my position on this one, but like basically what he's saying is just like Jack Ma, who is a Chinese billionaire, stepped out of line and started criticizing Xi Jinping and the party, and like disappeared. And basically he's saying that like, oh, but like a billionaire in America wouldn't disappear because like they're a billionaire. And so because they're a billionaire, they're obviously just a better person than most. And like, you know, they have a lot of political sway and they have a lot of economic influence. And so like, you wouldn't just disappear someone at the top of your social hierarchy, would you? Like, that's what it sounds like he's saying to me. It's just like billionaires are basically in a different class to the rest of us plebs, because obviously they've amassed so much wealth and the power that comes with that wealth. They're just, you know, they're the types of people that you just couldn't disappear in a free society. Like the rest of us plebs, different question. If we stepped a foot out of line and disappeared for some reason, then like whatever. But billionaires, you can't touch those people. That's what it sounds like he's saying. But in China, even a billionaire, even someone at the top of the economic hierarchy, if they step a foot out of line and they aren't doing things that are akin to what China's objective is in their planned economic sense, then, and someone's a threat to that nation, to them as a nation and a culture, they will disappear, despite whether they are at the top of the economic scale, a billionaire, or at the bottom of the economic scale. And like, you know, on face value, I don't think that's a problem. Like, honestly, if you compared the two systems, right? And like he's trying to make out like no one would ever disappear in America, or no one would ever disappear in a liberal democratic society. That's absolute nonsense. Look at Guantanamo Bay. Look at the laws that they have brought in since terrorism kind of laws come into effect and stuff like that. He makes it out to sound like America is some wonderful utopia where no one would ever disappear without some type of recourse or some type of fair trial or something like that. It's absolute nonsense. That's just wrong. But like what I'm talking about here is, okay, let's just assume that people do disappear in both of these societies, in an American liberal democratic society and a Chinese, let's call it planned economic society. So you have a planned economic system and a free market economic system. In both systems, people can disappear. But like what he's arguing here is that like it's not okay in China because a billionaire can disappear. But like I would argue the opposite of that. I would argue that like, isn't that funny that a billionaire, someone at the top of the social hierarchy, could disappear despite their economic prowess and their influence? They can still disappear. But like in America, when would you ever see the government or like someone from the establishment taking out Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or something like that to take them away and say, no, stop it. You shouldn't have said that. You're out of line, and then integrating them back into society. That would never happen in a free market society, where like, because those people are too powerful and they actually really control the system. No problem with reorientating Jack Ma. It's a sign justice actually is equal in China. It's not a free speech issue, which these guys it's not a free speech issue, which these guys always try to make it out to be. Yeah, they do try to make it out like it's this kind of difference between a free society and not a free society. I again, like, I'm struggling with that conceptualization that, like, just because you disappear, a billionaire makes you an unfree society. I would argue in the inverse to that. Like, if you cannot disappear people because of their social power that they get from their wealth accumulation, your society is not free. it is those type of people at the top there, like the billionaire class, that are probably doing some very questionable things from a societal wide perspective, and like they should be held accountable for the stuff that they do. Now, I'm not saying that Jack Ma was held accountable because he's done some questionable things, more that he just probably openly criticized the government, and that's hush hush, you shouldn't do that. But like the fact that he can, despite his social position, be called into question makes out like that is a much fairer society than Western society, where you have literally a class of people who are untouchable. They are untouchable. That flies in the face. The idea that you have a class of people that are untouchable, that flies in the face of liberal virtues much more than a society that doesn't pretend to have liberal virtues and doesn't have liberal virtues at the same time. Like, at least it is openly, like you can literally read what you see is what you get in that type of society, because they've never pretended to be a society that promotes liberal virtues and free speech, whereas the Americans do, and they don't uphold it. Oh, they don't uphold it for the rich and the powerful anyway. Like, on face value, I know which one I would prefer on face value, that is.
Moment, like, holy crap. You don't get that in the United States. You get the secured right to petition your government for redress of grievances in the First Amendment. French Revolution, they came up with a new calendar. Everybody had to be on the new calendar. It had 10 days a week. The months, there was 10 months a year. There was 10 hours a day. Like, literally, in 10 hours a day. They just, deal with that. Try to figure it out. The clock's like totally new now. You can go see some of these antique clocks with 10 positions on them, and that run like 2.4 hours each. Really freaking crazy.
Like, as we go on, this guy seems more and more stupid, to be honest. Like, now he's picking at the French Revolution. And where did that come from? Why is he going after the French now? Like, the French delivered us liberal society as we know it now in the 21st century, and in the 20th century too. But like, as we know it today, they delivered us liberal values and liberal society. Yeah, this is stupid. Like, what is he talking about? Why is he bringing that up even? Like, if he's such a proponent of liberal values and liberal society, he should be cheerleading what the French Revolution was all about.
They wanted to recontour all of reality. The 10-day week was just like the communists. It was to get rid of religious belief.
See, now, okay, so there we go. We've gotten to it. The French Revolution, which was a bourgeois revolution of varying levels of extremity. Okay, so you had, yes, people that were obviously way more extreme with their liberal values than others. So you had people that wanted to kind of have some type of constitutional monarchy versus like other people that really were like hardcore Republican Democratic, and they just wanted like, they wanted basically liberal virtue and like none of this aristocracy or anything like that. They wanted to eradicate the past, basically. And like, and he's bringing it up like it's some form of communism. What is this guy talking about? The Chinese now have 5 recognized classes, as I understand it. Jack Ma is in the national bourgeoisie. When he criticized the class structure in the party, he threatens the long-term prosperity. That's interesting. I'm going to have to look that up. Thank you, beasts and gods. I'm going to look up whether or not they actually have an ingrained social structure like that.
It was so nobody would be able to know which day the 7th day is, so nobody would really easily be able to go to church. They had the whole complete transformation. You were going to believe what the Jacobins, as the state, said you were going to believe. You're going to believe in this in China under the PRC. Really, you're going to believe what the CCP tells you. You're going to believe, and you're not going to believe anything else. And if you do, you had really better keep it to yourself in all regards. And then the American experiment was like, no, believe what you want, try what.
So he just compared, let me just get this straight. He just compared the French Revolution and the Jacobins to basically communists everywhere and communist revolutions everywhere. Like, this guy is clutching at straws here, like, honestly. And now he's going to just talk about how the American experiment was not about that at all. You could do whatever you want and live in absolute freedom and prosperity.
What you want, do what you want with your things, and we're going to protect you. And if you don't like how we're protecting you, come yell at us.
Yeah, I always liked the part when Mao made a speech about the People's Democratic Dictatorship, and then he talks about all the people that are not the people.
Yeah,
Like, you know, the people
yeah,
who are like the people get the democratic dictatorship, but the dictatorship part is, you know, the rightists, the counter-revolutionaries, the capitalist running dogs. These are not people.
that's
You know?
right. That's
Yeah.
that's on the correct handling of the contradictions among the people, which he gave in February of 1957. If anybody wants to go read that stunning document.
It's very like ancient pagan, like the Romans. There was like you were a Roman citizen or you were a non-persona.
Yeah, that's basically it. And as you mentioned, that
Sorry, and this is coming from Americans, right? Who are either you are American or you're an alien. You're an alien. Like it took me a while to come to grips with that concept because like no one else around the planet is as audacious as the Americans as to call their own people like citizens and anyone else an alien to their society. Like they're literally you're one of us or you are so foreign you may not even be considered of the same species as us. Like you really are an entity that is unrecognizable to us grandiose Americans. Like really, we are just an entity of ourselves. And maybe even stand above the human race altogether. So you're either American or you're some other form of human. It's true that the French Revolutionary calendar was meant to lead the people away from the church, but nothing to do with personal beliefs. Yeah, I don't know why that guy even brought that up. I think he was just trying to show how, like, I don't know, new / revolutionary societies can be a bit out there in their thinking or something like that. And like, you know, they want to crush religion or they wanted to kind of wipe the slate clean of religious control. But like he's saying, oh, but like, you know, in America, the land of the free, you can think and believe whatever you want. We don't try and touch the calendar. That's so extreme. Is it?
that speech, that's what literally Mao says in there. He doesn't just say, he does literally say that there's the people and then there's the enemies of the people, the non-people. But he also says explicitly in there that to have a wrong political orientation, it's a direct quote from this particular translation, to have a wrong political orientation is like not having a soul.
Let me let you in on a little secret. Mainstream economists have the economy completely backwards. My name
That language.
Wrong political orientations. Direct quote from this particular translation. To have a wrong political orientation is like not having a soul.
Interesting that he uses that language.
So why haven't any of the communist countries successfully eliminated the counter-revolutionaries and formed their utopia on Earth where there's no need of this powerful state?
Well, one,
This will be
they're not
interesting.
actually
This will be interesting. God, I really want to know his answer to this. Are you ready? Let's see if he just goes in the normal propaganda line. Or he sounds like a lefty. Eh?
Powerful state.
Well, one, they're not actually that. Nobody can completely squash the human spirit, as it turns out. I mean, you can see some pretty awful experiments that the communists did. The Patesti experiment in Romania is by far the most brutal, I think, that's ever taken place, to try to beat people out of their Christian and Jewish religious belief. And it just horrible stuff, but it didn't actually work. They couldn't do it. People would die before they would give up some of their core beliefs. And then there's kind of more practical reasons. I mean, people document under Mao that basically people were not starving during Mao's time in power to the degree that self-interest and free enterprise were allowed to find ways through the cracks. But there's another reason, which is that their model is wrong. Their model is actually incorrect. As a matter of fact, their model almost invariably doesn't just misallocate goods and services, but it also and labor, but it also puts into power people that actually don't know how to run things. What it puts in power are people who know how to play the political game and keep their power. It does not put into power people who know how to run things.
Well, that was actually really, really an anticlimax. That was really disappointing. I thought he was going to just spit out some or regurgitate some lines that you would have heard before, but like he actually isn't giving us anything to work with here. All he said so far is that the economic system doesn't work. use some like random example about how they tried to stamp out religion, like the only type of people that have ever tried to religiously suppress somebody else is a bunch of communists, which is like what type of world does he live in where he thinks that like communists are the only people that try to suppress people based on religion, but like whatever. And then he's like a throwaway line about like how they didn't work very well like economically, and now he's saying that the system itself puts people into power that shouldn't be there. Like that's never happened in the history of the human race, where like a type of system, a type of political organization has put into a social structure people that shouldn't be in power. Like that has never happened before in the human race. Like is this guy listening to the stuff that he's saying? Like honestly, like he must be conscious of how stupid some of this shit is. Like I hope he's conscious of it.
So that means things go wrong. And when things go wrong, people get desperate and they start doing other things. So now they're counter-revolutionaries. But the thing is that it's never actually going to work because it's an incorrect model for how to organize a society, how to organize people, how to
Can you
motivate.
see him like squirming and struggling while he's talking? He's really struggling to articulate why it's a problem. Like he knows it's a problem. It's got to be a problem. I've been told that thousands of times, and I've done the reading. I just can't fathom it yet.
It's an incorrect model for how to organize a society, how to organize people, how to motivate people. And it's, like I said, the political structure, the incentive structure of the political game is to be obedient to be obsequious to the existing political power hierarchy and to play nasty kind of two-faced games to rise within that structure. Now, Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's investment partner till he died, has this quote that I find myself saying almost every day, which is, if you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. The incentives in a communist circumstance, in a communist country, the incentives are never to do things right. The incentives are always to kiss the party's ass. So everything the party's wrong about, that's what's incentivized to do. It's always to rise within the party hierarchy. And like I said, there's two mechanisms of doing that: doing exactly what you're told and playing two-faced power games that undermine the power structure so that you can rise within it. Mao was on top because Mao was extremely good at that, at playing people against each other, then using it as an excuse to destroy potential rivals. So the whole thing is messed up. The incentive structure is wrong. The alignment with human nature is wrong. Their explanation for why it's not working is wrong and causes them to do purges and destroy. What happens when they destroy a bunch of these people?
That was just
Look, I know I wanted to do a reaction video. And like talk about like, you know, debunking some anti-communist propaganda, but like there was literally no substance in the end part of that. Like at least the first part, like it gave me something to talk about, like why this guy was wrong, but like he had nothing of substance at the end. Like they asked him a question square in the face, why doesn't it work? And he just talked about very unique, specific, like personal examples of like of leaders, and how like politics makes people do crazy things like undermine each other and like be backstabbing and cutthroat. Like we don't know that about politics anyway. I think that's very general to what it means to be involved politically in some type of human social structure. There's nothing insightful about that at all. And if you're going to say that this is unique to communism and it's not inherent to most political systems, then like you're going to have some pretty good evidence as to back that as to why, and explain exactly how, you know, his beloved free market system or liberal societies, democratic societies, don't produce the exact same effects as that, because like it does. It does produce the exact same political nastiness as that system as well. So like I don't know where he's going with that. I really don't know where he was going with any of that at the end there. It's unfortunate. Let's see what this guy says in summation though.
one piece of our almost 2-hour-long interview. Are you a curious person? Of course you are. We're now putting full interviews only on our new China Uncensored premium website, ChinaUncensored.tv.
China Uncensored. Yeah, like China Uncensored, like it must have got me really well, because like I really just thought that China uncensored or unscripted might be a little bit more objective than some Western propaganda piece. And like I said, this it's the title that got me. The purpose of communism is not to govern. Like I was like, fuck, someone understands that like communism isn't about governing at all. It's got to do with like a type of society, a certain position that humanity finds itself in once we've reached a level where our technological and our knowledge, our technological prowess and our knowledge gives us a level of freedom from the burden of having to kind of slave away at producing what we need as a social unit. We can kind of be liberated from that and kind of focus on what it means to be human. But like that is rather utopian from what I understand, thinking that like humans would want to spend more time on being human. That's a fanciful idea, apparently. So look, let's just quickly, I'll see if there's any gold in these comments. So bear with me here. The purpose of communism is not to govern. Nope. The purpose is to own. So the purpose of communism is to own. I'm not sure how that is a critique, if that is a critique. But like this might be very insightful, this comment section, just to see kind of what the general understanding is from a hardcore right-wing view of like, you know, of dirty communism. That kind of thing. So your premise is that greed is good. You may need to define your comment as sarcastic if that is your intention. In small doses, well-disciplined greed balanced with both moral character and ethics is actually good. It's called ambition. So it's not greed, it's ambition that you're talking about. What harnesses ambition in a way congruent to a harmonious and prosperous society for most, an indirect democracy or a republic, if you will. Any system of governance will have a hierarchy and will have both winners and losers. Capitalism is our best option. See, I find this kind of critique or this kind of rhythm, this theme that runs through kind of a lot of right-wing rhetoric or pro-free market, pro-capitalist rhetoric, which is kind of like, it's kind of an admission that capitalism has its problems, but like it's just this end line here, but capitalism is our best option. So like it's not great, but it's the best thing we've got kind of thing, which is like, you know, it's a useful observation in the sense that like it's useful that like people have acknowledged that capitalism has its downsides. Like it's not all sunshine and lollipops. But like it's a bad thing in the sense that like it just shows how complacent and self-defeating humans are generally. When we're just like, oh, it's our best option, like kind of thing. Like, do we have anything better? Like, there's no vision in a statement like that. There's no hope. There's no forward thinking. There's nothing. But like a very pessimistic attitude, which is very, very unfortunate, I think, for a human race, for us as a species, where we have people that like are just reserved to be like, this is as good as it gets. It's not the best, but like, what else are you going to do? Like, it's a very unfortunate psyche for us as a species to be in. Like, they talk about like communism being like this place that, you know, that fails to have anyone that would have any ambition. And the good thing about greed is it'll motivate people and stuff like that. But like the reality is, like, you want to talk about motivation, like the people that actually are switched on enough to understand that capitalism has its drawbacks are just like, oh, well, it's the best thing we've got. Like, talk about ambition for like, you know, for anything outside of the individual, like for, as a species, as a human race, our best ambition is just like, oh, well, are you going to do any better? Like, it's all we got, like kind of thing. Like, that's what capitalism does on a macro level. If like talking about like, you know, it incentivizes the individual, well, what does it do to people as a species? It just makes us all apathetic, really. Oh, well, what else are you going to do? male defenders incoming. There are humans who are people, and there are humans who do not enjoy personhood. Don't know what that is. His wife recruited Joan Shen, Twin Peaks actress, to become an actress. Joan was a sharpshooter for his regime. Now she is very involved in California's Democrats, specifically Nancy Pelosi. Conspiracy theories. Mao took it a step further. He focused on the peasants, not the proletariat. He drove the European Marxists crazy. One ideology doesn't fit all. Whoa, whoa, whoa. America is a beacon of hope in this world. Please win. The fuck does that even mean? Right now, I'm in between jobs, but as soon as I get a job, I'm paying that $15 a month. That's really interesting. Right now, so like, let's just read the subtext here. Right now, capitalism is failing to provide me with adequate sustenance to survive in this system, but I would really like to hear more of your stuff. Once I get $15 a month, I would like to be told what to think about this system as opposed to forming my own opinion. People seem to be unable to think of something different than what they actually know. I think that's really what, yes, this type of stuff is showing us, that people have a real lack of an understanding of how to think critically about something. Like, look at this comment here. Like, right now I'm between jobs, but as soon as I get a job, right now I'm in a system which treats me as nothing but an employee or a producer of value in the monetary sense. So once I have that monetary means, I will kind of continue to listen to what you guys are talking about. Are there examples of societies living something else than capitalism, whether bourgeois or state capitalism? I think it's a good question. Like, I can't help, Mary Ellen, at the moment to think about like the Chinese system. Like, this Chinese system is definitely not communism, let's just say that, and it's definitely not capitalism either, because like capitalists and like, you know, people living in liberal democratic societies would be the first to tell you it's definitely not a free market or liberal democratic system. And so like the question is, what is it? What are the capitalists doing? So what are the Chinese doing? Now, like, you know, people would describe that as state capitalist, where they have kind of they live under a capitalist system, but obviously the state controls. And I think that's a sufficient definition. If you want to get into kind of semantics, you could argue why it's not state capitalist or something like that. If you really wanted to argue about that type of stuff and that gave you energy, it doesn't energize me, unfortunately. But like, what I would call it is just like, it is a planned economic system. So like, they're fully cognizant of market forces, so they understand the ability for capital, but capitalism and free market are two different concepts, aren't they? Look, you know what, I think they are different concepts, but like, people use them interchangeably. So for the sakes of like this type of content, I use them interchangeably, but I think, yes, you're right, they are two different concepts. The free market is something that exists in order to explain an economic mode. So like setting up a society so that people are able to freely exchange with one another, where capitalism is more than that. Capitalism is the total society and its makeup based on a certain form of economic structure. So like, capitalism would include all of the people in that society, where a free market kind of just analyzes the players in a market setting. But like, most people attribute or associate the free market with capitalism. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because like, you don't have really free market societies outside of capitalists or capitalism. Like, you might have had some type of market social structures in other forms of society, but not on the scale that you have in capitalism. But yeah, like what I was saying before about like how China works and stuff like that, they are they are a planned market society. They understand the forces of capital. They understand how important capital is as a way of getting people mobilized and to do things. And so like they can mobilize labor forces, they can mobilize, investment on massive infrastructure projects. They can mobilize people around the world to create infrastructure as part of like an initiative or of part of like some type of broader vision for developing countries around the world. They understand that capital is a way to put people into motion, to put ideas into motion, and to get results on the ground. But they do so with some type of a plan. They do so with some type of a vision. Capitalism and free markets go together. The problem is that the capitalist insistence of their own freedom contradicts the need to protect the openness of markets to them. Marx discusses this contradiction. The problem is the capitalist insistence on their own freedom contradicts the need to protect the openness of the market to them. Yes. Well, the capitalist insistence, the capitalist incessant drive to, in terms of their competition with other capitalists, ends up contradicting the freeness of the market themselves, because what capitalists will tend to do is, as they compete with each other, is they will start to cannibalize other capitalists. And then form larger and larger entities, which basically form monopolies, duopolies, cartels within a certain sector or a certain industry, which basically diminishes the idea of the free market, because you have an entity that has such power and such influence that it like basically discards these free market ideals. And like it starts to use its political influence to get decisions made in its own interests, which degrades the idea of a free market and free market competition. So like capitalists who kind of insist on competitiveness end up undermining competitiveness in the long run, the larger they get. And so like the real question is, if you really want to have a free market under capitalism, do you just have to continually break up the biggest players out there so you can ensure that there is an actual level of competition out there? So like, do you need to regulate the free market, which is what I'm saying is what the Chinese do. They are fine with capitalistic forces, they're fine with market forces, as long as it is completely regulated and beholden to the ideas of the state. And so like, is there an alternative out there? There is an alternative, and I think that like in Western societies, they're going to have to start planning things. Like Western liberal democratic societies are going to have to understand that they cannot leave things up to the free market, like just let the market decide what to do now when it comes to infrastructure spending, and like having visions for the future, because the market is incredibly short-sighted. It's really only looking for the profits for the next turnover, the next cycle, the next financial year. And like, because this is the way that the bonus system works, this is the way that like this is the way that just modern kind of late stage capitalism works. They're really only thinking about profits next year or a few years out. There's no grander vision, and without the political system that has a grander vision in it too, like the life cycle for the average liberal democracy is like 4 years. So like, if politicians are only really caring about now, whether they get re-elected or not, and it's just about political careers. Like before, people used to really get into politics to make a difference, but the way that the political system works now, I would argue, is that people really only can concentrate on getting elected in the next cycle. And so liberal democratic politics is ridiculously narrow and short-sighted. And so if you have capitalists who are short-sighted and the political system that is short-sighted, you have absolutely no planning and investment in the future, and someone who has the balls to make the right choices now to ensure that there is wealth and prosperity in the future. Like those sort of decisions aren't being made, and so like the West is crumbling. Like Western societies are slowly crumbling from years of neglect and years of lack of foresight, vision, and proper investment. And that's why like the Chinese are really killing it at the moment, because like, okay, they allow some market forces to happen, but they really want to make sure that the vision, the plan, the longer term plan is being rolled out. And anything that's contrary to that, or anything that threatens that, like Jack Ma, as these people described, will be put on notice and will be, disappeared. Read some of Xi's collected works about Western capitalism, and it's startling to hear how an outsider describes it. Very startling. Yeah, I know. I will have to read some more of his work, but like, yes, it's interesting when you see like people from the outside looking in at a system, and like, a point of view and a different perspective can really change how you see things. It's quite chilling. But China also planned short term, like having only, yeah, they did. Yeah. And so like, I'm not saying that planning is the be all and end all. Like that's social engineering, if nothing else. Only having one child, like looking at your society and saying, oh well, we're just not going to have the resources to handle this thing, so like let's just stop everyone from basically making choices about whether or not they contribute to humanity by having children or not. That's like kind of breaching without, that's kind of, yeah, going beyond the market control and into social engineering, as I was saying. But like the Chinese are no strangers to that. It's very Confucian to kind of think that the state knows everything, and like everyone just falls into line and does what they're told on that. She is worth reading in English if you have to. Well, I'd have to, because I wouldn't be able to read him in anything else. But yeah, and like the one child policy thing is really gonna bite them in the ass over the next 10 to 20 years, because if you look at their demographic profiling, like they have a massively aging population, and like I think a lot of their workforce now, like the largest section of their adult population is in like their 40s or their 50s, I think, which is crazy to think about, because like, over the next 10 to 20 years, those people will be retiring, or like will be in that class of people that should be retiring anyway. And so like what's going to happen with their like productive capacity? Like they still have a huge population, don't get me wrong, but like they've already surpassed their peak in terms of like who's the biggest band in their society. So yeah, I really don't mean social engineering when I talk about planning. I'm talking about economic planning here. Like what type of bullet train are we going to invest in next? What type of infrastructure are we going to build? Are we going to build a new city from scratch? Are we going to go build a port over there? Are we going to be investing in sustainable energy on like massive scales? Because these types of elements is what governments are supposed to do, because they do bring value to the economy. Outside of just this particular project, they like reverberate throughout society, and people get there's many wealth creating systems and networks and nodes that build off these massive infrastructure investments, which is, again, this is what the Chinese do really well compared to liberal societies. Like 100 years ago, different question. Like there was a lot of integrity in the political system, and you had like, American presidents and European presidents that were like, more than happy to like, bet their political careers on making the right decision about what they're going to invest in the future, like with a new deal or something like that. And they were more than happy, like they were going to go down in history as being the politician who like ensured that their country was set up for the future, wealthy and and prosperous, but like you just don't have those types of politicians anymore. And if you do, they like the political system itself is so ineffective that they can't wrangle enough support to get anything done anyway. So like, yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about like liberal democratic societies, and if they don't start planning things, I would say, like there's no hope for them moving forward. One wonders how they will handle the immigration problem as the population ages, like the US and Canada and Britain's have. I don't know if they're going to do anything about that. Like, to be honest, like, so one thing about like the Chinese and like kind of Asians generally, or maybe like let's say the Northern Asians, like they're very proud kind of people. Like the Japanese have been handling like dealing and staring down the barrel of an aging population for a long time, and not once did they think, oh, let's open the borders kind of thing. Like they have very stringent migration policy, and like their kind of Eastern philosophy is very different in the regards that like they do think that a homogenous society is like a happier society and stuff like that. And so like I don't see the Chinese going like, not following the Japanese kind of example on that one and just being like, oh, we've got such an aging population kind of thing. Let's just bring in all these migrants from elsewhere to shore up our population issues. I really don't see the Chinese kind of doing that, in my opinion anyway. Yeah, like I don't see them opening up their borders massively to let influxes of different cultures in to solve the issue. It'd be interesting to see how they handle it, but like I don't know if they are. If you look at like what they're investing in at the moment, it's all robots and stuff like that. So like maybe they do think that there's going to be an army of robots out there in the next 10 to 20 years that are going to take up a lot of this labor force and be kind of there at home with people, helping them out in their retirement. But time will tell. Time will definitely tell in that regard. But yeah, look, thank you very much for joining me today. I really wanted to go through some of that propaganda because, yeah, it popped up in my feed the other day. And like I said, the title was deceiving because I thought somebody was actually understanding what communism is about. But like it was the actual opposite of that. It's a propaganda piece and a hit piece on communism. And like I got caught out by it. So I thought we should watch it together and then we can analyze some problems with the way that the West perceives communism in this day and age, and like just so we can have some insights and some discussion around that. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for those of you, Mary Ellen and Beasts and Gods. Thank you so much for interacting in the chat. I really appreciate it. Makes it all worthwhile. And I will be back next week with some more live streams. We'll start off next Monday with a YouTube live stream. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. And until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are, or MysterE. Have a great weekend.